Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So since yesterday's video, there have been a few developments in the surprise coup in the Intelligence and Security Committee. And in this video, I'm going to discuss what more we know, how it represents a quite stupendous tactical error on the part of Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson, which will surely only hasten their early departure from Downing Street, with thankfully a lot of their work undone. And also, just at the end, what I think the report is likely to reveal. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, as I left it yesterday morning, we didn't really know for certain, or I didn't, why a Conservative MP, Julian Lewis, would stab Boris Johnson in the back and work with Labour and the SNP to take control of the Intelligence and Security Committee. Now we do. So the first thing I saw on it when I woke up was the Liberal Democrat candidate in Julian Lewis's constituency saying that he was a vocal critic of Russian interference in our affairs. At which point, two thoughts immediately struck me. The first is, at that point, so the Russia report is going to be released after all. That is the reason why he's done this. And sure enough, yesterday, quite early on, the committee have said that they will be releasing it next week. More on that in a bit. Second, Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson, who sought to rig this committee to bury that Russian report, have cocked up big time. And I mean big time. Consider this. Boris Johnson was desperate to bury this report. It should have been revealed over half a year ago, well over half a year ago. It was written last March. It couldn't have been released last March. It has to go through various checks first. But all those checks had been completed by November. And the way Johnson and Cummings went about burying this report was exactly the way you would do it. There was nothing wrong with their methodology. He made sure that he would be appointing a majority of the committee. That would mean he could dictate who would be the chair because they vote on it. Well, if you're going to appoint 5 members of that committee and they all vote for the same chair, then that chair gets in. Your choice gets in. Now, legally, the government are not supposed to interfere with this. This is a parliamentary committee. The government are not supposed to have anything to do with it. But of course, he did. What he needed for his plan was 5 loyal MPs. And when I say loyal, I don't mean loyal to the party or loyal to the country. Of course not. Good God. Loyal to him. And that would be happy to do his dirty work for him. So Boris Johnson appointed 5 Conservative MPs with the sole priority of burying the Russia report forever. And for this task, he chose someone who is a vocal critic of Russian interference. Was he stark raving mad? The answer, of course, is no. I didn't know Julian Lewis is a vocal critic of Russian interference. I don't know much about him at all until yesterday. The same is clearly true of Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson has been his parliamentary colleague for many years, so he should have known better. What this demonstrates, what is really obvious, is that neither Johnson nor Cummings knew that Lewis was of this mind. That means they didn't do their homework. They didn't really put the thinking in. They thought to themselves, these are all really dead keen Brexiteers. They're on our side. We'll use them. It's not how it works. And it's this lack of detail that we expect of Boris Johnson. We know Boris Johnson has no attention for detail, but it also proves that Dominic Cummings is also incapable of managing situations as well. And also that he's not very good at thinking on his feet, because when they removed the whip from Julian Lewis, which basically means he's no longer a Conservative MP. So well done, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, who got to decide that 5 Conservative MPs would be in this committee and that his pick would be the chair. Guess what? The chair isn't even a Conservative MP now. As other people have pointed out, stupid to withdraw the whip, because now Boris Johnson has no control over this MP whatsoever. And if people are thinking to themselves, oh, well, you know, he'll get his comeuppance in the next election. The guy's, I think he's going to be 69 years old this year. Come the next general election, he may have been stepping down anyway. And if he wasn't, well, he easily could. It's not a big problem for him. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Dominic Cummings is not nearly as brilliant as his allies think and his enemies fear. Like Johnson, he got where he got based on lies, lies and more lies. And that's not to say he's not dangerous, but he's not that clever. They both have an ego as well, which works against them, because when you have a huge ego, it means you're not really open to scrutiny of your own ideas, particularly by other people that you see as less than you. The idea of facing scrutiny from others is abhorrent to them. If they can think of something critical about their own ideas, that's sort of okay. Anyone else? No. The result of this, spectacular cock-ups like this. And I am loving it, because at the end of the day, although I shouldn't be loving having an incompetent government, if you're going to have a government that's evil, I'd much rather they were grossly incompetent, quite frankly. Then there was the announcement of the publication itself. The entire committee voted to publish the report immediately. It was unanimous. So that meant, obviously, the 3 Labour members voted for it. That was going to happen anyway. The SNP member voted for it. That was going to happen. Julian Lewis, well, we knew that now at this point. I didn't when the coup had happened, but we knew that. So that it was going to go through. But that's still 4 Conservative MPs that were there to do a hatchet job on the report that still voted for its release. Now think about what that means. Because although Cummings and Johnson obviously made a mess of choosing their 5 stooges, we can't think they got it wrong in all 5 cases. So why didn't some of the other Tory MPs vote against the publication, which was their job? That's what they were on the committee for. Seemed fairly straightforward to me. Voting against the publication wouldn't have changed the result. Only when that becomes clear, when the report comes out, if the report really is damaging in any way at all, and I'll come on to how damaging I think it will be, they might have some awkward questions to face in terms of why they were suppressing it. When the report comes out, if it's very, very clear it's in the public interest to see this report, people will say, why did you try and block it? It's very obvious none of those MPs wanted to be seen to be blocking something that was going to be released anyway. They were happy to block it if it was never going to see the light of day, because you can just claim whatever you like about it. Once you can't do that. Now, a number of people have tried to say that this report won't be all that spectacular. It'll be a bit of a damp squib. Now, it may, in some people's eyes, it may not be what some are expecting, and probably not what many are. Many may not appreciate its contents, but I am convinced it will be spectacular for a few reasons. First of all, Boris Johnson was absolutely desperate to bury it. That is clear. He'll have been hopping mad when he found out what happened. I mean, he wasn't even thinking, whoever's decision it was, Dominic Cummings or Boris Johnson, we get the impression it was Dominic Cummings' decision to strip Lewis of the party whip, because apparently, this is all off the record, according to some correspondence, contacts in the backbenchers are not happy. They again got it in for Dominic Cummings over this. So they suspect this was at the behest of Dominic Cummings. But it makes no difference. The person who's physically done it is Boris Johnson. And again, it's done him no good at all. Now, secondly, some people might think, okay, yeah, Boris Johnson was desperate to bury it, but again, he's not a details man. He probably didn't even read the report. Maybe he was being oversensitive. That it's not all that damaging. He just thought that it was because he doesn't do detail. In other words, he's overreacted in trying to bury it. But also consider that the Conservative Party were the recipients of some very large donations from Russians with close links to the Kremlin immediately upon Johnson announcing that he would not be releasing the report just before the general election last year. So it's not just Boris Johnson that wanted this buried. Russians close to Putin didn't want it releasing either. Were they both overreacting? That starts to look a bit less likely. The third thing is that members of the committee who were appointed specifically to kill off the report also voted for its publication when it's clear that they wouldn't get their way. That suggests, like I say, they don't want to answer any awkward questions about why they tried to block it once everyone can read it for themselves. 4. The government has gone into complete panic mode by throwing dead cats everywhere. This report is going to be released in the next week. and they've gone mad. The first thing the government tried to do was bring out a statement saying that there was evidence that Russia tried to interfere in the 2019 general election in, get this, Labour's favour. Now, first of all, you might query the timing of this. It's a bit odd, isn't it? On the day you unexpectedly find out the report's going to be made public, you now say that Russia has interfered in our elections? It's a bit odd, that, isn't it? It's a bit odd. Funny timing. And you can see why they try this form of distraction, trying to go on Corbyn. A lot of people will buy it for the following reasons. We have to face up to this. First of all, they're alluding to leaks of government reports. Now, government reports were leaked and Labour used them against the Conservatives. Of course, they were leaked by British civil servants, not the Russian government. And also, if you're going to say that all these reports were leaked by the government to Labour, you're basically saying that you haven't really got much control over your sensitive documents, have you there? Maybe you need to clear out some Russian spies from the government. Secondly, the personal Corbyn link. So Corbyn, of course, doesn't really attack Russia in terms of its international behaviour. It particularly included a defence of Putin's government over Novichok. That played out very bad in the public. Never mind that Boris Johnson has demonstrable ties with the Russians close to Putin, including visiting their homes both in Britain and abroad, and accepting large donations, something Corbyn and Labour certainly haven't done. But most of the media isn't pointing that out. They'll be pointing out how, oh, isn't it funny that Corbyn didn't really attack Putin for this or for that or for that. So it sticks. 3, there'll be nothing to disprove it, because do you know what? This Russian report's got nothing to do with the 2019 general election. It was written in March 2019, 7 months before a general election was even called, let alone happened. It's exactly the same thing that Trump did with the Mueller report. Talk about what it does and does not contain before it's published. All lies, of course, but it doesn't matter. You say, oh, it contains this and it contains that. You say how pleased you are with the report because it completely exonerates you. And then people go, oh, God exonerates him. Oh, I don't even need to bother reading it then. It's not going to be that interesting. So they don't bother reading it. And most people would not bother to read it anyway. Let's face facts. And most of the media are quite happy to play the government's game on this. So what do I think it contains really quickly? I mean, collusion with Russia? No. A lot of people might be thinking that because of the Mueller report. It's a totally different relationship, Trump and Putin. Boris Johnson clearly has collusion, of course, but this report is about the 2017 general election and I believe the 2016 Brexit referendum. Johnson wasn't in charge then. Cameron and May were. My belief is that it was simply in Russia's interest that the Brexit referendum resulted in a leave vote and that the 2017 general election resulted in a Conservative vote. So there was interference, but I think it was independent of the Conservative Party, independent of Tory strategists and leadership. For me, the culpability of the Conservative government, I think, in this report is probably going to be in that they knew about this from their own intelligence services. It was raised with them and they suppressed that information. They did nothing about it because it was in their interest. This Russian interference actually helped them, so they did nothing to stop it when they were told. I think the report is going to be about Russian involvement and that the awkward questions for the Conservatives, if you're looking in it for lots of personally damaging things about Boris Johnson or the Conservatives, I'm not sure that will be in. I think the awkward questions for the Conservatives will not be so much about direct wrongdoing in the report, but that they sought to suppress the information of Russian wrongdoing. Well, it's difficult to say wrongdoing because they're acting in their own interest. Now, if that is the case, it may well be a letdown for some observers. But for me, it would still represent a government whose first duty is supposed to be protection of the realm, doing nothing about unfriendly foreign interference in our democracy. So those are my thoughts, and I think it will be exciting to read myself next week, particularly as we really didn't think we were ever going to see it. As well as, of course, being able to get some expert security, legal and constitutional thoughts as well in due course. Until then, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.